Hello everybody, my name is Eric Wood and welcome to Eric Talks, a show where I talk about things that are important to me. And today, I want to talk about the alt-right. Okay, so the alt-right is kind of an important thing that's recently been bursting onto the scene, and it's very important, but before I can talk to you about the alt-right, I need to talk to you about Nazism. And before I can talk to you about Nazism, I have to talk to you about fascism. And before I can talk to you about fascism, I have to talk to you about socialism. I know we're kind of jumping all over the place, but bear with me for a minute because we're going to get to some very important stuff. Okay, so do you see this book over here with the nondescript Nazi symbol on it? Or I guess swastika is the technical term. This is The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William S. Scheer. Scheer? Anyway, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. Which, like it sounds, is about the rise and fall of Hitler's empire. Yeah. I also have, right here, Hitler's Charisma, which is another book about fascism and the rise of Hitler. And I have many, many more books pertaining to the issue of fascism and the, idea of radical ideologies that are motivated by the us versus them mentality. But I just want to show you those things to make you understand that I have a weird obsession with radical ideologies. And just to be clear, I hate them. I think that Nazism is one of the worst things to ever exist in human civilization. But it's important that we understand them. So with all that said, let's talk about socialism. So a long time ago, there was this guy named Karl Marx, and he asked the very basic question, why do things need to cost money? And why does it suck to make money? Why is work hard? And other complex philosophical questions like that. And the reason that socialism is important to understand is because Karl Marx gave way to this idea of the dictatorship of the proletariat, which in a very summarized version is the idea that there should be a strong state to enforce a moral idea. Marx's idea was it's bad to exploit workers and therefore we should use the state to protect the workers. This idea being the dictatorship of the proletariat, an all-powerful state to protect the proletariat. Now there was a guy who was very fond of this idea and who was a passionate Marxist and a socialist, and his name was Benito Mussolini. But there was a problem here. Benito Mussolini loved the idea of communism and loved the idea of Marxism, but found that there was a problem, mainly that communism and Marxism doesn't work. So Benito Mussolini said, what if I take the ideas of Marx's class loyalty and combine them with the traditional conceptions of national loyalty? This idea was called fascism, which is described by Benito Mussolini as nothing above the state and nothing outside of the state. Once again, Benito Mussolini's fascist idea is largely different from the communist idea, but one thing remains true: the idea of the state as a moral agent. It maintains the idea of the us versus them mentality, but now has the added benefit of using nationalism as a way of motivating revolution. Now, after fascism in Italy comes National Socialism in Germany, or abbreviated Nazis. Understanding Nazism and the transition from fascism to Nazism is essential to understanding the ideas of the alt-right and the ideas of racial purity that have been coming up lately in the news. So Benito Mussolini's fascism was not inherently racist, it was nationalist. So Benito Mussolini's fascism actually gained a lot of support from people like the Jews in Italy. It didn't matter what color you were as long as you identified as an Italian and submitted to the will of the state. At least at first. Then came along this guy named Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was never a communist sympathizer, but he did like the idea of fascism. And he said, what if we take this fascist thing and add a crap ton of racism to it? For Marx, the working class was good. For Mussolini, the working class Italian was good. For Hitler, the working class German Aryan was good. So from socialism to fascism to Nazism, there's this compounding idea of identity politics. Basically making the us smaller and smaller and smaller, and the them larger and larger and larger. Now, to be clear, I think all of these ideologies are evil, but you can see how it becomes more evil the more exclusionary it gets. Okay, so now with all of that groundwork out of the way, we can move along to what the subject of this video is actually about, which is the alternative right. The alt-right is very easy to understand, and it can be broken into two parts. Part one is the idea that Western civilization is good. Now, there's nothing really wrong with thinking that Western civilization is good. I think that Western civilization is good. As a matter of fact, I would argue that most people who live in Western civilization think that Western civilization is good, and there's good reason for that. If you like classical music, the idea of human rights, or even the idea of democracy, if you like any of those ideas, the fact of the matter is you are a fan of things that have come from Western civilization. Being proud of Western civilization is no different than someone being proud of being proud of a Western European heritage is no different than being proud of an African American heritage, or an Asian heritage, or a South American heritage, or really any heritage. You have a right to be proud of the things that your culture produces. Now, where the alt-right and white supremacists take things a step further is they say not only is Western civilization fundamentally good, they say Western civilization is the best civilization that has ever existed. Now, this is where things start to get wonky, and trust me, they will get worse. But, for example, I really like Socrates. But you know who else I like? Confucius. And I think that the Roman legionnaires are one of the best fighting forces in the world. But you know who else is some of the best fighting forces in the world? The Zulu. It is a culture that has good elements to it. And the same can be said for any culture and any civilization ever. So that's the first part of the alt-right. Western civilization is superior. But where they start to get evil is in the second idea. The second idea states that if Western civilization is superior, then it must be because of white people. This is utterly truly absurd, but this is what they claim. They claim that if you aren't white, you are not capable of upholding the ideals of Western civilization. Which is utterly bonkers, insane, crazy. Okay. Just realized my camera was cutting off the majority of my... I just realized that my camera was cutting off the majority of my head for most of that. But anyway, so all of this is important to understand because the alt-right has adopted this strategy, and unfortunately, society at large has played perfectly into their hands. They have tried to convince people who are not alt-right, who do not understand the alt-right ideology, that they are in fact with the alt-right. So, for example, when there was the whole declaration that Pepe was a hate symbol, suddenly everybody that likes memes were alt-right. Suddenly, and this is a strategy that has been taking place for the past few months. If you're conservative, you're alt-right. If you like Western civilization, you're alt-right. If you have a problem with illegal immigration, you're alt-right. If you like memes, you're alt-right. And they've done this thing where they claim more and more factions to be a part of their membership. This has created a large portion of society that is sympathetic to the alt-right without actually knowing what the alt-right is, or what it stands for, or what its ideology is. So if you're a liberal and you see people who disagree with you, they are not inherently alt-right, and don't call them that, because when you do, it makes the alt-right stronger. And if you're on the right and you think you might be alt-right, seriously examine whether or not you're a racist piece of crap, and then answer that question honestly. Because at the end of the day, alt-right ideology is that non-white people cannot possibly uphold the ideals of America. And there has never been a less American idea than that simple statement. Anyway, that's all the time that I have for today. In the meantime, please try to change the world today. You are a beautiful human being. And as always, sincerely yours, Eric Wood.